Yo, what up?
We're here.
We got I got Harris. I'm gonna let you say your last name so I don't butcher it. Kouklakis.
Did you nail it?
Yeah, nailed it.
I've been practicing.
Bet you can't spell it.
Kouklakais.
So you guys just added that last A at the end for no reason.
Yes,
IS.
I was trying to buy vowels.
Coffee's here.
Mhm.
Oh, thank you, Sabrina. Actually, I left my coffee over here. I'm just gonna walk off here. Hey, see you guys later.
Oh.
Now that I passed the spelling bee.
Thank you. All right, we're back. We're ready. What do we got today?
Today
we got legal stuff.
we have legal
Contracts.
mumbo jumbo.
Yes.
I think this is going to be particularly for buyers and sellers transacting on the Illinois side of the border. Illinois, the majority of Chicago Metro is using multi-board 8.0 right now.
Yeah.
That came into play 4 months ago. Maybe less.
Yeah, it's been a few more months than that. I think it's been here for a while now. Honestly, a lot of people didn't like it at first. I kind of like the 8.0. I think it's a little bit better organized, and I like some of the provisions they added. But
so let's talk about what you like about it. What's in the organization? I think for on the lending side, like putting numbers together for people's side, the breakout of the sellers' contribution to buyers' agent commission things are pretty. It makes it very easy to understand.
yeah, I like that a lot. Having the commission in the contract now because of the rule changes, I think it's a lot easier, a lot more transparent. And, it's honestly, from what I've seen, it's leading to a lot of agents actually getting paid more on the buy side.
No kidding.
Because they're able to negotiate better. And now it's before you can always do it, but before everybody just defaulted to whatever the co-op compensation was in the MLS. And so they'll just take whatever. Now it's like you have to negotiate that up front, get your buyer agency agreement signed, negotiate your commission in the contract. Everything's up front, and you can structure a deal a little bit better.
How does that? I've done non-real estate questions because I'm an idiot in this. So now that there has to be written out, if I'm going to entertain a buyer, who says who's going to buy it? Like, is that a separate negotiation? I'll be like, okay, I need 3% to buy for you, and then you find a house, but who's going to pay for that 3%? Is that a separate?
No, it's part of the contract now. Yeah, so it's all included. So there's a portion of the contract now that says seller will contribute whatever percent or dollar amount toward buyer agent commission. And so the way you could do it now is you put that directly into the contract, or the seller can negotiate. I don't want to pay any commission, which I've seen too. And so then it goes on to the buyer. Do they want to make up the difference of whatever the seller won't pay?
Yeah. Or will they just take the lower?
A lot of times what agents do is they'll work with the credit. So they'll say, okay, I need, we agreed on 2.5%. They're going to give, they don't want to give 2.5%. Well, we're going to work out the credit in the contract to make up for it.
That's the biggest piece. Now it separates out your seller paid closing cost credit and the commission component, but you can still use part of the seller paid closing cost credit to cover if there was a gap in whatever your buyer agency agreement was,
or anything else that comes up. That's pretty cool.
So that cleans it up on our side too. The solar panel provisions.
That's a good one to put in there because before it wasn't in there, and solar panels are the bane of my existence.
Mine too.
Yeah. Don't get solar panels. It's not
really
over here. Yeah.
Why? Because it's like, why?
So the majority of them are on like a 20 or 30-year lease.
Yeah.
And so there's a cost to them. Well, when you go to buy the house, sometimes we're dealing with stretch.
Assume a lease.
Yeah, exactly. And then a lot of these companies, they're consolidated, and it's venture capital started out. So then you're chasing down the buyer. So now the buyer's going to qualify for the mortgage. The buyer also has to then qualify to assume the lease.
Oh my gosh, which is another loan.
Correct. Well, and then so that's the other tricky part is we have to get a copy of that, because depending on how that lease is structured and how the solar panel deal is structured, we may or may not have to include that in their debt to income ratio.
Oh man.
Not to mention the inspection is a huge thing with those, because there's always going to be something wrong with the roof.
Always.
You know what I mean? The minute you put those solar panels on, all the warranties and everything for the roof go out the window.
Yep. And you can't repair the roof unless you rip those off. Exactly.
And so what a lot of people, like what I've seen before, is the buyers want the solar panels removed, roof inspected, and put back on. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. Yeah. Or let's say they get under contract. They aren't sure about the solar panels if they want to keep them. They're like, we don't want them. Seller remove them. Okay, so
Now there's holes in your roof.
well, yeah, and then they obviously want the roof repaired. But then, okay, let's say they remove them. How much time is left on that lease and or loan
Yeah.
for the solar panels
All
that
right,
now
solar
have to
panels
get
are
paid
out.
off? Yeah, I mean, for the savings around here, I don't know like the statistics on the savings around here, but I can almost guarantee it's not worth it when you go to sell the property.
Yeah, you just lost all that energy savings.
Is there any, like, I guess from an insurance perspective, do you guys look at that? Do you consider it?
I mean,
I'm guessing they're not covered. It's probably the solar panel company's problem, right?
Well, they are covered.
Oh, all right, so they are.
But there's major issues like hailstorms come, so they're cracking.
Yeah.
So, and then same thing with the roof. When you got to replace it or repair it, you got to rip them off. There's an extra $3,000.
Yeah.
Minimum.
100%.
So yeah, sorry, solar panel.
Yeah, don't get solar panels, please.
Yeah. Please, we're not into green energy.
Yeah.
All right, so we talked about that. Talk us through a couple other things that you like about the contract or some of the changes.
Yeah, I like the new inspection provision. Before, there was an automatic 5 business day inspection period included in the contract. And so there wasn't like, basically, there was a lot of confusion when people checked as is, because the sellers thought it meant one thing, the buyers thought it meant another. And so a lot of times you'd have people checking as is and then saying, well, I could still ask for major items, right? You know, major health and safety. And the seller is thinking they took it as is, they're not going to ask for anything. And so what they did now is they have the as is, but then they also have the inspection provision, where now you have to check which one you want. You either waive your inspection, you have the right to inspect with requests, or you have the right to inspect without requests. So now you know if somebody takes as is, well, if they checked without request, they're probably not going to ask for anything. Honestly, in reality, sometimes people still ask for things, but that's besides the point. But at least now the seller has all the parties have a better idea of what the deal is.
So the buyer can inspect it. They can't request anything, but they can walk away from a deal if they find something bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
So before it was like as is. What does that really mean?
That means you're bound to the
Or are you asking the seller? The seller's going to assume they're not going to ask for anything. The buyer's going to assume, well, if it's big enough, I could ask for it. You know, if the roof is falling apart.
A lot of assumptions there. You know what assumptions do?
Exactly. Kills deals. So
Turn people into asses.
So I like that part. Now it's kind of a little bit more straightforward. Even if they're taking as is, are they going to ask for requests? Are they not going to ask for requests? You kind of have an idea.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So
those are the big ones. Anything else in there?
Yeah, those are pretty much the big ones. They added some stuff in the personal property that makes more sense now with like smart thermostats and all that kind of stuff. So
Your ring doorbells.
Before you kind of had to like, you know, a lot of attorneys would throw that in their letter saying this includes smart thermostats and ring doorbells and all that kind of stuff. So,
You're not taking my nest.
yeah, you'd be surprised.
Really?
You can take my nest egg.
Jeez.
There's no, we got a furnace, but we got no thermostat.
Mhm.
So that's a great way to segue into some of the conversation that goes into these weird terms that come up in real estate transactions that confuse the average buyer, that confuse the average seller. And there's never any real clarity to it, because I think when you get under a contract, it just bam, 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 right? It's like, all right, hurry up, get the attorney, get a home inspection, get with the mortgage guy, get homeowners and like it's just a huge rush. But in reality, we have this attorney review provision where that contract, although it's signed, is technically can be canceled for any reason for a couple days.
Yeah, so it's 5 business days after acceptance of the contract. You have your attorney review period where the attorneys for either party can approve, disapprove, or modify the contract. As really for any reason, it's not besides just price.
Yeah.
But honestly, there's so many excuses you can use if you don't like it. Let's say you get a backup offer and it's better, and you're like, well, you didn't take it as is, we're canceling, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
So, and as a buyer, like, let's say you know for a fact it's about the price, there's just an excuse. What are you going to do, really? You're going to sue them?
Yeah, who's going to take that case?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a waste of time and money. So, yeah, the attorney review period is pretty open-ended, but it's important. I mean, there's a lot of things in the contract that, you know, if you just went by what's written in there, wouldn't really make a lot of sense in practicality. For example, the tax prorations. So, as people in Illinois know, like the reassessments recently happened and are happening now, depending on which area,
Which county?
which county you're in, which area of the county. And so the contract defaults to the taxes being prorated at whatever percent you guys put in the contract of the last full year tax bill. So right now in Cook County, that's 2023. That's the last full year tax bill. Well, if the property's been reassessed for 2024 and the tax assessment went up by 40%, that proration is not going to give the buyer nearly enough money when the new bill comes out, because the exemption is going to show on the second installment bill.
So what happens with that?
So then now we have to we do a few things. We can either use the new assessed value, modifying the contract to use the new assessed value in the formula for the tax bill.
To guess it, right?
Yeah, to get a good idea.
Yeah.
You can also hold some money in escrow until a reparation agreement, until the tax bill comes out and you know what it's going to be.
What's the cleanest?
The cleanest way to do it, I would say, to do the reparation agreement.
Yeah.
Hold the money, wait till the bill comes out, and then see.
So that is the cleanest. However, that does have, in a lot of cases, a negative impact on the buyer's cash to close.
Yeah.
Because that money is now just sitting in escrow until that bill comes out. So yeah,
it's extra
clean.
cash.
It's clean, it's fair, but it's also now that buyer is not getting that offset to their bottom line a lot of times.
Yeah.
Not to crap on the parade, but
No, I don't love them either. I would rather do the first option. Let's just use the new assessed value and be done with it.
Yeah.
Because the other thing is now you have to hold that money until the bills come out. And so 2024 bill, that's fine because the bill's going to come out. But like, let's say if they want to hold it also for the 2025 year, then you're waiting until the end of 2026.
Yeah.
And so typically in those scenarios, what the attorneys will do is just say, okay, we'll do it for 2024, and then 2025 will just, we'll do one way or the other.
Wow.
Because most of the time sellers don't want to hold it until they just be like, I'm not going to wait an extra year and a half.
For a couple $100
Right.
most of the time.
Yeah. Unless you're dealing with super high property taxes, which sometimes is the case. But
sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, they've already rated all the pension funds, so they got to go for something.
Well, I think Cook County right now, they're talking about delaying the second installment tax bill again till December, because they're trying to shove $200 or $300 million of additional assessment or levy into the bills. It's chaos on all fronts. So
100%.
Attorney review, obviously, you're working through taking the contract, which is a lot of words, some numbers, and turning it into relevant and practical application. So that's a 5-day period. That's what we're talking about, why it's important to have a responsive attorney.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happens if one side has a responsive attorney, the other side doesn't? Do you even have a contract?
It's open-ended, because the contract also has an agreement deadline. At least the multi-board one does, not the car contract. But there's an agreement deadline 10 business days after acceptance of the contract. If there's no agreement, either party can terminate as well. So it's just kind of open-ended, and there's a huge contingency out there for either party to really terminate on. So it's important to get it done, especially on the sell side, as soon as possible, so the buyer can't back out. And on the buyer side, you also want to make sure, depending on how the market is, are they going to get another offer, terminate yours, and go with the other one? Which I've had both happen. So
if you're a buyer, then if Adam's a buyer or a prospective buyer, should he be working with his agent and or doing his research to maybe find a real estate attorney as he's entering the marketplace, and just at least having that contact and that introduction, so that when a contract does come through, you're already familiar? If he picks you to represent him, you're already familiar with what he's looked like, who he is, how he wants to communicate. Same thing with the seller. Like Adam's going to sell, obviously work with either the agent to get a referral and or do some research and find that person, versus just waiting until you're under contract on either side to then pick the attorney.
Yeah, so I recommend, and I like when agents do this, is they have a client they're working with, and they say, hey, this is my client. The agent says this is my client. You mind just hopping on a phone call with them really quick and just see if, have any questions and all that. I'd rather get in front of them before they get under contract, set their expectations and go from there. But a lot of people just rely on whatever their agent refers them to. Unfortunately, a lot of people will just go for price as well, which, there are good attorneys that charge, $250. I've charged that in the past for certain clients, but I mean, if you're going just strictly off price, you're going to get burned.
Let's talk about that for 1 second, because we've always this subject always comes up. Price. It's like, think about what you're getting for $500 or $600 or $800. I don't care. Make it $1,000. It's like they could be saving you tens of thousands.
The taxes alone, typically I pay for myself.
Yeah.
The hours of your time, like trying to do things you don't even know about.
Yeah.
God, I can't even understand.
And like the attorney review letter, I've seen some of these in the negotiations on the inspection stuff. I mean, those are 25, 30 line requests sometimes.
Oh yeah, I've had, so my document goes from A to Z. So I've had them, like, especially last year, for some reason, I had a bunch of clients that were like this. It would go from like A through Z all the way to like double O.
Oh my God.
In inspection items. And you're just sitting there like, the seller's attorney is going to call me up, I know for a fact, and start screaming at me like, what is this?
Yeah.
So
I mean, I just don't understand how you guys can even charge that little. I know, unpopular opinion for people, but like, you break that down to the number of hours you spend on a transaction.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like, what?
Yeah, it's really,
again, it's protecting your interest too.
yeah.
That's wild.
And so, I mean, like I said, I mean, I understand why people care about the price, but at the same time, it's like half the time they're paying their agent an admin fee. And like, if you're asking me to go to $250 and their admin fee's $500, does that make sense? I mean, like,
I already hear people knocking on the door.
Yeah.
I love it though.
But no, I mean,
it's fair.
It's really fair. I mean, you want somebody that is going to actually take the time to represent you. And like me personally, I don't think $400 should make that difference.
No.
I mean, you can go to the attorney that's going to charge $100.
Yeah.
You can go to the attorney that's provided by your work for free. But are they going to respond to you?
Well, and part of like, do they transact in real estate? That's one of the biggest pieces. Like, do they even understand that we're on the multi-board 8.0 in a lot of areas?
Yeah.
You know,
No, they're at a call center in Dallas. There's zero chance that those people understand the intricacies.
No. I mean, it's true. A lot of attorneys, and this is the reason, real estate law is one of the top 5 for malpractice.
Really?
A lot of attorneys think they could do it on the side. It's not that hard. They're form contracts, whatever. And sure, with at least
get away with it. Yeah.
Residential, 90% of the time you're probably going to be fine. But I mean, I promise you, like, you're going to mess something up. Especially taxes are the biggest one.
Yeah.
Well, attorneys that don't do real estate don't know a thing about tax preparations.
Yeah.
And so they're going to get their client, their buyer, getting a tiny credit for a huge tax bill. That's thousands of dollars right there.
Last year, you and I worked on a deal that ended up fizzling out where that exact situation happened.
Yeah.
You said, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you were representing the buyer, but Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we know that these taxes are going to go from $8,000 to $18,000 next year. We want the applicable proration because we know this. We can look at what the assessed value came out at. We know generally what the tax rate is going to be.
Yeah.
And it ended up, it sank a deal, but in that case, it's $10,000 that the buyer would have been out in eventual tax obligation. Yeah, that's a real number. I would say 10 grand.
Yeah, I mean, it's depending on where you're at. I believe that one was an Olympia Fields property, something like that. Those can be huge. Wow. The differences. So
obviously preparing, understanding, introduction, getting that all in line, having someone responsive. I know, just knowing you personally too, you've invested a lot into the infrastructure of your business to make sure that you can be extremely prompt with responses, ultimate clarity, ultimate transparency. And I think that you're also probably one of the youngest real estate attorneys that I know, not from an experience standpoint, but just you understand technology and that people can transact and communicate a little bit differently. And so you've invested heavily in that, right?
100%. And, as my volume grows, this has been something that's, growing pains, as you guys know with your business, growing and keeping that communication. And so, actually earlier this year, kind of end of last year, I had this little transition period where my volume was high, but I didn't have the help. And I was also, like you said, trying to get my infrastructure correct because I was doing everything from my cell phone. You can't do that once you hit a certain volume. That had a little transition period, but we're good now. I got a paralegal that is extremely, extremely experienced, very good, very responsive. We got a phone, text, email system that is perfect, is very good now. So basically our communication can be as good as it was before. without me having to be the one,
Yeah.
looking at everything at all times, because I'm driving around to showing. So to have somebody on my team to be like, hey, this is what's going on, can handle the administrative stuff and say, hey,
That's
you need
huge.
to call this person, you need to do this, you need to do that. This person needs to talk to you. That way everything's more efficient.
Yeah. That's
It
cool.
allows you to win on that prompt, that 5-day period, that 10-day
100%.
period, right?
Yeah.
Like you're
Well, you can just deliver better value. Like,
100%.
and it's good to have anybody on your team, but especially a lawyer that's like trying. You can see their business, like, and I've known Harris for a while, but you're always trying to get better and learn the business and grow. Which means if people are like, oh, he's got to grow, he just wants to grow. No, like you can't grow if you don't deliver value.
100%.
So,
I mean,
like-
if I could tell you how much money I've left on the table by doing things for free
I
or
believe
for
it.
peanuts,
Yeah.
like I do things right now for the relationships and the growth.
Yeah.
I care about building trust and value, good relationships. And then, in 5-10 years, maybe then I could focus more on making more money. But like right now, I just want to get the clients, make people happy, grow
Grow
my
your
name.
reputation, grow your business. That's
Exactly.
you want on your team.
That's
Honestly.
exactly. And then you want someone that doesn't just rely on this is how we've always done it approach. Like every
Yes.
time we've talked, you're on another level of refinement of this is how we're going to attack this. This is how we're going to attack that. But you could either pay a couple dollars to get someone that's not responsive and or out of practice, out of touch, or you get someone that has transactional experience who is constantly trying to be at the forefront of communication process and prompt response. And that's the difference between having the edge, whether you're the buyer or the seller, throughout the entire process. We have Tony on here a bunch of times talking about control of, whoever has control, buyer control or seller control. Well, it starts with responsive support.
Yeah, 100%.
And you're talking about transacting $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $800,000. At what point do you realize that the attorney fee is actually a fair number in that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I have a deal right now up in Lake County, Illinois, $1 million and, $600.
Jesus.
So, you know what I mean? Like,
That blows my mind.
yeah, but I mean, and they're not easy deals.
Yeah.
The buyers on this one, I represent the sellers, and the buyers are very nitpicky. They're very stubborn.
Yeah.
They're very kind of unreasonable with their inspection items, because when you get to that price point, people are like, I'm giving you $1 million.
Yeah.
I want you to
$1 million.
redo the entire driveway. It's like, we can't do that. It's not a new house.
Yeah.
And so having an attorney that will actually, spend the time to fight for you and go back and forth. I mean, we must have spent 2 weeks fighting over stupid inspection items. But that's what you got to do.
Harris making less than minimum wage on that deal.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we'll kind of finish up with this. We kind of talked about this before we jumped on really quick, and the whole idea of defending whatever side of the transaction you're on. But we run into a lot of zoning situations, especially when we have extremely restricted inventory still. Buyers is kind of willing to buy anything. Sellers maybe not doing research on their actual own property. How often does zoning issues come up? Do they come up during attorney review? Do they come up once the lender sends the appraisal and goes, hey, we got a problem?
Yeah. So the biggest times that zoning comes up is when you are dealing with multi-units, because there's a lot of properties that are non-conforming uses. So they used to be okay, zoning changed, but they're grandfathered in because they've always been that. The issue that comes up typically with the lender is that the way the non-conforming uses work is that if the property burns down or gets destroyed, you can't then keep using it, rebuild it, and use it as a multi-unit. Now it has to go to the single-family use. And so lenders a lot of times won't accept it because, that's their investment. What happens
Changes the deal.
Exactly.
Well, actually, when we're doing the appraisal, we had to go highest and best use. Well, highest and best is a 2-unit. Oh, now it's only a 1-unit.
Yeah.
You and I had a conversation with the client
That's
a week or two ago about some specific insurance coverages to maybe help that. But that comes up. So obviously, when it comes up, how it comes up could be it's a mystery. But if you're looking to sell your house, the majority of these municipalities and counties now all have their zoning on a GIS map. You can type your address in, kind of figure it out. If you're a listing agent taking a listing, type it in. This one specifically that I was talking to you about was pretty funny because all of the parcels surrounding this one all have variance, rezone, So you knew that that seller probably got at least 85 letters at some point about some things changing over there. But
100%. Another big one I want to talk about, though, is not necessarily zoning, but a lot of the south suburbs, I do most of my deals in the south suburbs, have now rental restrictions. So this is something I've been dealing with the last few months.
Yeah.
Check, if you have an investor or a seller, check with the municipality to make sure your property can be rented. South Holland, they now have a 10% cap on the number of properties that can be rented in a certain census tract.
Wow.
Yeah. Markham right now, they're making everybody sign just an outright statement that they're not going to rent it. So it's like you have to make sure in these different areas that you can rent your property.
especially if you're buying it as an investment property.
Right.
Yeah.
Surprise.
Right.
Not gonna bet. You can't invest it. Now you just got to sell it again.
Harris, anything else you want to cover from contract, legal side of things? You personally?
Not really. I just a little bit about myself, I guess. I do residential, commercial. I can do your seller finance, your land contracts, things like that, licensed in Indiana and Illinois. And now I also have an immigration attorney that works with me, so we can help anybody in the U.S. Since immigration is federal, with getting citizenship, visas, all that kind of stuff.
That's it, man.
Good guy to know.
He
Look
is
him up.
a good guy. You could spell his name wrong. You're probably going to
You're
find
gonna
it.
find him.
Your office is in Maryville there for Route 30? Right?
Yep, Taft and 30 in the Oak Forest, Illinois.
All right. Well, hey, appreciate you hopping on.
Thanks for having me.
Talking through all the fun stuff. Obviously, you guys talk to us. You can we'll connect you with Harris if you got any questions with anything. He's a fantastic guy, great business mind, and will beat up someone for you.
That's right.
On paper. Only on paper.
On paper.
Anything else
Allegedly.
on your side, Mr.
No,
Mann? That's
rock
it.
on.
All right. Well, we're out of here. We're gonna go build an ark with all this rain again, and see you guys next week.
I'm done. Cut the show.